Times best-selling author, and some people even say I'm a life coach. I started the Daily Dish Show to share my story, my truth, and my journey to vibrancy, and to inspire others to do the same. Because it's all about grit, perseverance, and finding a way despite the odds. It's about embracing the whole woman, not just the parts that are easy to love, and feeding her heart, mind, body, and soul. But I found that this isn't just my story, it's your story too. It's go time. This is the Daily Dish. Well, hello there. It's Tuesday. You know what that means. Catherine's in the house. So is Jocelyn. I'm so glad to have you here, by the way. Today we're going to be discussing something very, very interesting, and it's going to be, I'm interested to get your perspectives. Let's just go with that. All right. There's a lot of reasons why. You'll see. Anyway, we have a special going on. We still have a couple of odds and ends left of our inventory that I want to see go. Okay. So it's a buy one, get one, guys. Buy one, get one. That is a screaming deal. You can find it at savingdinner.com/show. Crave Water's there. Over 40 Waters there. We have maybe a hot melt mix or two. I don't know. Hello, Samantha. Nice to have you here today. I'm trying to think of what else might be there. I think there's some drop, but that's it. Not a lot. So go grab yours now. savingdinner.com/show. Also, the special that we have this week is something new that I have just discovered, and I have to tell you about it. It's Collagen PM. Now, here's what I love about it. It's got all this stuff in there that helps you with your sleep, especially GABA. If you have like your mind's going like this when you're trying to sleep, it's got a lot of, there's like 5 theanine, I think is in there. There's like 5 different things plus collagen. So the collagen is going to do the rebuild work. And it's going to do all the things that we need collagen to do. And they have a chamomile honey flavor that is delicious that I do every single night. I am loving this. There's also a chocolate there, and I think a lemon is another one. But Martha, hello. I'm glad to see you. If you have any sleep issues whatsoever, give this a try. So far, I am loving this. So we got a special deal on that. That's savingdinner.com/PM. Okay. Lastly, don't forget about Happyish. Happyish is my new course that just came out. It's 8 weeks. It is self-paced. You go at your own pace. And I think you're going to like it because a lot of us get stuck in this place of wanting to be happy. Well, I've got some words for you in this whole course that might help you to see things from a slightly different perspective, and you'll find yourself a lot happier, at least happy-ish. How's that? Okay. savingdinner.com/happy is where you're going to find that course. Our quote of the week is it's a good one. It's not your job to like me. It's mine. And that's from Byron Katie, who wrote The Work by Byron Katie. She's one of the people who kind of got me into meditation. And I also loved one of the things that she said way back when that I read. Suffering is optional is one of her big things that she said. And I just thought that was completely brilliant. Look who's here. Susie, hello. It's good to see you. Anyway, that's what we have all going on this week. Our quote of the week, yada, yada, yada. And today we're going to be talking about invisibility. Now, if you're getting my Substack or you're watching me on TikTok, this is a conversation that's happening. And it's so interesting to me because, this one woman lamented about how she feels so invisible and not seen and this, that, and the other thing. And then there's a whole bunch of women who are saying, are you kidding? Invisible? This is great. I love it. So it's interesting to me that we have these very different you know, perspectives on what being invisible is about. But I want to talk about why, in particularly, that for some people it stings while it feels heavier, and also um, let's rewrite the script a little bit, because we have a tendency to believe the stories that we tell ourselves in our heads. We do not need to do that, by the way, but we also have the opportunity to make shifts and to understand, like, oh, the A goes to B goes to C kind of a thing. And it's like it's putting together a puzzle. We got to get the edges first. Hear me out on this, because I feel like this is something that's raw and it's real for all kinds of women. So we're going to be talking about that because I just think it's so important, especially because there's such a different weight, if you will, put on these words. It's such a conundrum. So, first of all, what is in play here? All these years later, here we are, and some women are just cut to the bone about feeling invisible, while others are saying, "Are you kidding me? This is like the best thing ever." So, here's the truth. Invisibility isn't new. This is something that women have complained about over a millennia. Okay. Um, Women have always been pushed to the margins as they've gotten older for centuries. It's just what it is. And it's the fresh young things are the ones that come to the foreground. And in our culture, we certainly see that. But as our estrogen and our progesterone decline, they don't just make our bones more brittle. They don't add inches to our waistline, but they also change our brain chemistry. We have estrogen receptors in our brains. So that brain fog is real. As that estrogen diminishes, the brain fog increases. And it also modulates serotonin and dopamine too, by the way. So those are the neurotransmitters that buffer our moods, our motivation, our resilience. And when they start to dissipate, we find ourselves feeling a little more raw, a little more vulnerable, and we don't just brush things off the way we used to. We feel it in an intense way. It's just the way it is. So that sense of being disregarded can come about as just being really, really prickly for a lot of women. It lands heavier. It feels louder. It is not in your head, right? It's in your neurochemistry. That's what's going on here. And I think it's really important that we understand that, because if we understand that we're just a big human bag of chemicals and that we have the ability to manipulate these chemicals with certain things, then it makes it easier to understand. My last Substack that I just did a couple of days ago was all about that. And it was all about how brain chemistry liberated me, I'm going to say, when I was about 60 years old, 7 years ago, because I started to understand the difference between a growth mindset and a set mindset, a fixed mindset, from Carol Dweck, that started with that, and all the way through talking about the amygdala, the reticular activating system, and all of it, and how it gave us our control back, because once we understood a system, then we could operate it. So we're going to get into the brain science of this, because this to me is really important, regardless of how you feel, because we need to understand our system and understand what the brain science is on all of this. So our brain is a pattern recognition machine with built-in negativity bias. We all know that. We're going to be looking at things more, we're going to be looking at the negative stuff more. I'll give you an example. My column that I wrote, a Substack that I wrote at the very beginning of August, got 64,000 views. It had 600 comments, whatever. I had a couple of negative ones. Guess which ones lived in my head? The negative ones. 2 negative comments lived in my head and upset me deeply. This is something that our brains do. And I knew that, and yet it still upset me. So when you couple that with hormonal sensitivity, You've got a system that's primed to feel invisible even when you're not. Okay? Makes sense? But the good news is that we have very flexible brains. We do have a growth mindset if we choose to buy into that system, and they can change until the day we die. Truth and fact, by the way. So if we practice, then we can train them to reframe invisibility. We can reclaim our agency and stop handing our worth over to somebody else's opinion, right? Isn't that crazy? So there are hacks to this, and it's kind of under the radar a little bit, I think, anyway. These are things that people don't normally talk about. But I'm going to give you let me see how many do I have here? I think I've got 5. Um, under no 4. I've got 4 under the radar brain hacks, and these are going to help you. I promise you, they're going to help you, regardless of how you see them, regardless of this invisibility or not. It can help you with whatever it is that is causing you extra sensitivity. Okay. So the first thing is name the alarm, don't obey it. You know, all know that I call my amygdala Amy. And sometimes I've been as, obnoxious as I'm like, Amy, take a seat, because she is so loud. Amy, our amygdalas, or however you name yours, is the fear center of our brain. And it's the one that screams the loudest. And as we listen to it, we are training ourselves almost like a dog. We are training ourselves to listen to it while ignoring our prefrontal cortex, which does all the thinking and the dissecting of ideas, abstract thinking, solution oriented, etc. Okay. So we need to understand that we have to acknowledge which part of the brain this is coming from. So you don't have to name it. You could even say, well, thanks, brain, for all of that. I've got this. I'm on top of it. I see you, but I'm safe, because that's the whole thing with the amygdala. The amygdala, the fear center, it's all a matter of survival for the, like saber-toothed tigers are out to get you, that kind of a thing. But we can also when we give that pause, it gives us an opportunity to allow the prefrontal cortex now to come into view. Right now, the prefrontal cortex is being drowned out, but you can bring it back in simply by naming the alarm. You can say, thanks, brain, or you can say, hey, Amy, I've got this. Whatever you want to do. And you don't have to call her Amy. You can call her anything you want. I don't care. But the point is that pause gives you an opportunity to flick down and to damper down that amygdala and to allow the prefrontal cortex to come in and start doing some of the work here, the heavy lifting. There's also micro moments of agency. Now, this is interesting because studies show when you take small intentional actions like speaking up in a meeting or making eye contact where you might not normally do, instead of like looking down, even adjusting your posture helps to adjust your chemistry. Okay. Isn't that interesting? It pumps out dopamine for you, just those things, because it's tapping down again the amygdala and it's doing something a little contrarian, and it's allowing you to rise to the occasion, as it were. And these tiny acts of visibility rather, snowball into bigger confidence. Isn't that neat? Just little itsy bitsy things. I love this. And then the third thing that you can do is reframe the story. I love the reframe because it gives you different questions to ask. Okay. So instead of saying, well, why didn't they know? What am I, invisible or whatever? We ask ourselves, well, where do I want to be seen? See, do you see the difference? I mean, is it necessary for us to be seen, I don't know, in a coffee shop or whatever? No. But it's necessary for us to be seen if we're in having a conversation, right? And somebody just completely overlooks you, completely ignores you. But the brain is suggestible. So when you swap out passive questions for empowering ones, like, where do I want to be seen? Then you shift your blood flow from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. Do you see where I'm going with all this? And I swear you can feel it. I swear you can feel it. It is an off switch for the amygdala. It is an on switch for the prefrontal cortex because you're asking an empowering question. You're asking something more complex. Not just, are you scared? Are we nervous? Are we, whatever. One of the things that I learned to do because and I used to freeze up in tournaments, pickleball tournaments. And if you've noticed and watched my, have watched my feed on Facebook, I've been winning a lot more tournaments. I have switched the phrase that I've been saying. When I found myself getting nervous, I'd say, you know what, I'm really excited because it's the same kind of emotion. It's just switching it into an empowering place. Do you see what I'm saying? It works. The other thing is the belonging audit. Listen, we are tribal creatures. We need community. The studies have shown that people who are in community, have viable friendships, and keep those connections going are less likely to have dementia, less likely to have all kinds of chronic illnesses, and are more connected, more content, more happy, less depressed, and the list goes on. So we have to understand this is how your nervous system works. It is wired for connection. You are wired for connection. This is what we want. So if you're spending time where you feel dismissed, then your brain codes that as chronic stress. And guess what happens? Again, the chemical reaction. The adrenals go nuts. Here comes all that cortisol. And so we want to swap that out for an energizing lift instead. And your whole system will recalibrate. So what does that mean? That means that you want to be in a place where you are connected. You want to be in a place where you are doing things with other people. I've got my pickleball group. There's hiking groups. I'm going hiking tomorrow morning early. There's hiking groups that you could do with me. These are all connections, and it changes everything for you. It gives you hope. It gives you openness. It gives you possibility. It makes you feel good. And that's basically what it's all about. So, the metaphor that I always come back to, a rosebud is beautiful, but for a moment. A rosebud is meant to open and to bloom. And when we are in full bloom, of course, as we talk about, this is where painters have immortalized gorgeous, fully bloomed flowers, because then they are at their most fragrant, their most beautiful, and that's where we are. We're way past the rosebud stage. We are in our fully bloomed season. So it isn't about fading into the wallpaper. It's about being impossible to ignore, and getting to do this on your own terms, right? That's the important part. So go read that Substack that I just wrote. It's open. It's free. You can read it. It's on Substack. .com/the blooming era. That's me. The blooming era. You could even run my name and you'll find it, but that's the one that's open. You can read that. This whole idea of brain science just cracked open my world and changed my perspective of everything. It was exactly what I needed. It got me out of my fear. It got me out of my shoulds, got me into a place of noticing, being aware, and having a life that looks a whole heck of a lot different than it did when I was in my 50s, even way before. So because you know that your brain is changeable, invisibility stops being a destiny and starts being a choice. Okay. And if you choose invisible, bravo. But if you don't want to be invisible, then do something. We are not trees. We are not stuck. We can do something to change and to make our lives exactly what it is that we want. And at this stage and in this era of our lives, this blooming era of our lives, it's imperative. because you don't get a do-over. You don't get to trade the car in like like you would. You're stuck with the body, you're stuck with your head, you're stuck with all of it, but it can be glorious. And part of the glory, if you will, is that understanding that the power for all of this is in your hands. You can create exactly what it is that you want in your life. You can. You can. And I want to encourage you to do so, because this and these are our very best years. All right? That's all I have for you today. I felt really strong about talking about this, just simply because I think it is so important to recognize and to realize that sometimes we want to be visible, sometimes we don't. It's up to you, and you get to decide. All right, that's all I got. Thank you for joining me today. I appreciate you all. I will see you next Tuesday live. Peace be with you. Bye-bye. Thank you for joining me today. You can find me on TikTok for daily tips to help support your most vibrant life. And remember, you are the author of your own story. Until next time.